last slide is the worry slide. I worry that police I see on the streets will bother me or my friends. And so 31% of those asked this question strongly agreed that they worry big time when they see the police. And another 30% strongly agreed with that statement. And so that's a whopping 61% of people who were surveyed that are worried about the police, right, on a daily basis. And so you have this whole conversation or narrative around trust that's out there, right? There ain't that much trust in our communities for the police. I'm going to do this really quick. So just a quick preliminary action steps that we're going to do as a result of the data. We're going to create a community-based definition of police reform and accountability that removes current conflicts of interest, meaning the police can't be part of the reform effort. It has to be real community controlled. We're going to create a new community-based definition of public safety. We don't believe that public safety means more boots on the ground, more prison beds, more jail cells. The police department in Los Angeles consumes 57% of our general fund budget. That's at the expense of parks. That's at the expense of trash collection. That's at the expense of teachers. We think funding all of those things and rebuilding the infrastructures in our communities is what leads to public safety, not the current narrative that's being sold, seize the moment, not settle for scraps, and doing community-based solutions. And then this is just a quick look. Folks, what they say about us, that folks don't care about their community. Dogon noted to me earlier something interesting. So we're doing data collection, and look at all the men's heads, where they are. They're down. They're looking, they're doing the survey. And then this is what they have to say about it. Excellent way to get the truth about the residents. Not many folks understand the gravity of a situation other than a black man, because we were targeting black men in this process. And I'm brushing a little bit. Another respondent, a lot of people like myself is determined to make this a better community. Yet another narrative that's never really told. Just more collection efforts, excellent survey. The survey made me reflect on years. Just some press coverage, some action. This is our PAR team. That's me and Dogon here on a PAR day. And that's it.
All right, I think we got like 5 minutes. So I will hang out after. With the time that we have, any questions, thoughts, concerns from any of us on any of these projects? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you both for all your work. It's amazing. And I'm from San Diego, California, and I just think that, our men of color are being targeted just the same way. And some thoughts that came to mind were, if your program or like your work that you do, if there's any proactive ways that your program kind of works towards the healing of our men of color and what that looks like. And if there's like any foundation of a cultural identity to our indigenous roots.
Wolf, what's about that hope in terms of cultural, in terms of getting involved in all of that?
Yeah, so one thing that we found out so we talked about the Mirror Initiative just now, the Seed program. I'm also like the head evaluator for that project also. And the one thing I seen when I was on the hiring process is that we had one guy say that, before this right here, you gave me this opportunity, I actually put in 50 job applications. And that right there, I got rejected. And because of that right there, I was hopeless. I was in a deep state of despair. And I was really thinking about going out and doing something reckless. But then you gave me this job. I got my first paycheck. And out of that first paycheck, what I was able to do was save some money. And now I'm thinking about my next paycheck, I'm going to save some more money. I'm going to eventually get me an apartment. I'm going to eventually get my car. I'm going to try to help my son, who's a football star, and get him into college and buy new stuff. And what I realized, what my brother was doing, was that he was dreaming. And that long as we can install that little dream, that little hope, believing that tomorrow offers better opportunities than today, then I think that that's our ultimate goal in the end. And I think that projects where we come in and we gather the data, like us, where we become owners of the data, of the knowledge, and that we present it in a way that is conducive for us to make some ends, to make sure that we employ these young men from the street. We can provide that hope, and with that right there, we can cut down some of the senseless violence. So right now, real quick, I don't mean to talk about another time, but Matt Dinn, our Attorney General, recently did the same thing. He had a proposal in where he wanted to spend $1 million on 6 officers patrolling our cities. And when he came to me, I told him that what you consider community policing, we view it as community occupation. And with that $1 million, what we could do is we could provide 80 kids stipends for the next year at $1,000 a month, $250 a week. And with that 80 individuals, young men and women, I can build an army. And like you were saying, that instead of just addressing the instrumental concerns, so I really need like 2 days to talk to y'all about my thesis, right? but instead of just addressing the instrumental concerns, the victimization and the crime rates, we need to address the park issue, the Andre issue, the quality of life issue, and that's what we're trying to do now. So I'm a part of that right there. I'm also part of the Attorney General crime mapping program, where they call it a nuisance abatement project, where we're actually looking at nuisance property, taking them from homeowners who use their houses as drug bins, and we are trying to rehab them and give them to people who are homeless.
And so, I mean, for us, as goes San Diego, so goes the South Bronx, so goes South Central Los Angeles. And our work that we're talking about today centered on black men, but black men come from community, right? Community with women and people who identify in a number of ways. Culturally, what we've been doing is weaving in the arts, right? Is figuring out how to weave in arts and music and poetry. And it's a particularly poignant moment when you think about the Black Lives Matter movement that's going on right now, and how that sort of infused a new generation of truth tellers, across the radio waves and in other ways. I think I'd be remiss to not say we're attempting, while we're here today, we're attempting to nationalize this model. Right? We're attempting to take it out of the halls of academia and put it squarely in community. So we're looking for opportunities with community organizations and institutions that want to invest back, like Columbia. Hate to say it, I'm looking at the gentrification that's happening around Columbia because Columbia wants to spread its footprint. The same thing is happening in South Central, the same thing is happening at San Diego State. So we're looking for opportunities culturally to increase our bandwidth, right? To export these models of liberation and these models of work. And so if y'all have ideas, let us know.
We want to organize a National Street Park project from Harlem to South Central, from Chi-Town to Houston. One project, one mind, one vision. The arts is also the way that we do action. Keep in mind, right, we organized 2 street art exhibitions, right? The last one that we organized, 50 local artists from Black and Brown Wilmington, mostly from the street, 276 pieces of art, and a very high-end, white mainstream, lamestream center. We also organized about 25 musical artists, poets, singers, and rappers for justice, right? And they had the opportunity to sing. So space can only fit about 350 people. The first night we brought out 1,000 people. So that healing, right, healing through the arts is part and parcel definitely through park projects. We also released, in relation to the Attorney General's statement, we released the response. Social media manager released the response that I prepared on behalf of the People's Report, right? And a lot of people are following our social media, the governor's office, the mayor's office, etc. But we released a statement in response to the Attorney General, who's interested in running for governor, and his interest in gutting out Black and Brown Wilmington. And that's the language that we use. D1.
Thank you.
I got more of a statement than a question. As I'm watching it, I come from this background, and I'm also a victim of some of the things that you see on the screen. But as I was watching and listening, a few things came to my mind, and I thought about Gaddafi in Libya and how he took the young men and women that was on the street that wasn't in school, and he made them all social workers, and I see that that's incorporated in your program. I also thought about, when I watched the homeless, it made me think about scriptures like Jesus when he said that he wanted the unwanted masses, because many of us on the street has been forgotten about, and there's nobody working with us. And I say that to say, I'm in love with street par and what it's doing, and can't wait to see that it comes to here to our community, and I know it's on its way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right.
I'd just like to thank you guys a lot. I'm an intern, counseling intern over in New York, New Jersey Correctional Facility, and a lot of the narratives I hear when we facilitate our groups is very, very similar. You know, a lot of folks kind of struggle with the same thing and have the same needs for themselves and their families. And there's certain structural impediments that I've found in that kind of environment, where they call it, oh, it's a protected population, so we can't do research. Yet this is the very thing that could really empower my clients. So I just want to thank you guys for the presentation. A lot of exciting things going on in Newark. I mean, Ross Baraga.
Yes.
His stuff seems his administration is in line with a lot of stuff.
Yes.
So I think it's just an exciting time, particularly with participatory action research.
As in relation to DWAC, we often say this in some of our talks, right? The meek shall inherit the earth. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Right? We believe the answers are the streets to many of the social ills and social issues out there. They have the wisest and brightest minds, right? And if not them, then who, right? They will lead us through all of this. But they have to be given an opportunity, right? And we also have to realize what's going on to sustain them in this opportunity, right? And we all play a role in it. We're all complicit in it as well. We're all benefiting from it. So it's also our responsibility to speak more truthfully, to power, and or about the structural dynamics that are going on.
And I know, just quickly, I mean, we would be here all day, trust me. It's interesting. Someone once said that a broken system is a system where the outcomes can't be measured, right? But when we look at our work, you can measure the unemployment rate. You can measure the homicide rate. You can measure the incarceration rate. You can measure the food insecurity rate. You could measure the outcomes, the potential outcomes for folks in our communities. And so to that I would argue, the system isn't broken for some, right? Because we clearly can measure the outcomes of this system. And so when they talk about broken communities, they might be broken for us, but they are working for someone. And so for us, this work is about fixing these systems for ourselves. And at first, the first step for us is a reform agenda. But when we talk about reform, we talk about changing the balance of power at the end of the campaign. But ultimately, it's going to take a revolutionary structural realignment for us all to live in harmony. And so this is what we're talking about in this work. This is what we're attempting to export across the country and then across the globe. This is where we see our liberation.
Just really quickly, how much time do we have? I know.
We're probably over, but we're going to lock the doors.
We're good. Okay, cool.
Well, I just had a question on how you're taking care of yourself as you're doing this work, because it's so decimating. I'm in Atlanta, and we've been trying to develop alternatives to the police, and actually not trying, we've been developing those. And it came out of some work where we were trying to support trans women of color who were just being arrested all the time. They were engaged in underground economies for lots of different reasons, and they just got harassed all the fucking time by the police. And so, but then, in the movement, every day, literally, there's another story, there's another shoot. I mean, it's so constant. And I think in your communities, it sounds like the same. And I think that's a hard discussion that we haven't had as much, because we do our protests, we show up at rallies, we kind of do our think tank stuff, but then, people kind of start dropping out here and there just for a minute because they're tired. So I'm just curious how you're sustaining yourself.
So for me, I have been arrested twice. We have a community watch team. We go out and monitor the cops. And for the last 9 years, I've been on that team, and I faced 3-strike law twice.
For doing the work.
One time, he was in handcuffs, and I went to go liberate him, and I ended up in handcuffs on the wall with him. And so, I mean, I've been arrested in City Hall for speaking out. And so, I mean, I think it is, we gotta have the sacrifice. I got it in my heart.
That's right.
You know, there's no amount of property, there's no amount of money, no amount of nothing that can hold me back, that can stop me. And I think that's where we gotta go. We gotta go to the part where we gotta be ready to sacrifice and make sacrifices. It's not gonna come free. You know, so I'm ready to make sacrifices. So I'm in it for the long haul, and I'm ready to go. But if I end up back in prison, let it be. I was in there for the good fight, right? So I think, for me, I think we just gotta do what's right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we're doing what's right, I think that everything else is gonna pave the way. So for me, just to continue to struggle and keep fighting.
All right, brother.
And I think it's on the healing question. I think on the healing question, for us as community-based organizations, it's very clear to us that no one, especially when you're an organization that's fighting up against big capital, ain't no love outside of the organization. So the organization itself becomes the vessel, right, for the tears, for the pain, for the joy, for the love, right, for the patience, for the reflection. And so having organizing models that just step back, right, and just have the quiet time and just talk about those struggles, right? Because when we take a hit as an organization, it impacts us all in very different ways. And exploring those types of things, taking the time.
Yeah, you know, Dr. P and others, you know, I'm the biggest fan of street PAR and the whole PAR, you know, the whole PAR model. You know, I definitely embraced it as an opportunity for black and brown peoples to grasp the concept, to employ the models, and to empower ourselves. But I also have to ask. You know, there's a part of me that has to ask that. I mean, in the past, in terms of movements, in terms of black movements, they have been successful. You know, in the past, you look at Reconstruction, you look at Black Wall Street, you look at the Nation of Islam, you look at, to a certain extent, the Black Panthers. These movements, have been successful. Some have been more or less organized than others. And I, certainly want to have faith, of course, that PAR can and will succeed. At the same time, what do you have, in store, in terms of preparations, because, the powers that be are not going to just sit on the sidelines and let you, without any type of, any type of resistance. At some point, the powers that be are going to say, hey, man, this power model is too successful. Yeah. What do you have?
You should know, I just got finished writing for the Encyclopedia of Social Theory. I'm not sure the book is coming out, but I did a whole, 40-page chapter on historical contemporary aspects of PAR. Right? Central and South America probably have done the most radical iteration of PAR. Probably the most successful, most radical iteration of a PAR project was Che and Castro's Literacy Brigade, or their Cuban campaign, literacy campaign. Right? In 1 year's time, they went from 50-60% literacy rate to a 90-98% literacy rate. Right? We've never seen that before or after. Right? And then they also took over the country, kicked out the U.S. Right? PAR researchers started to be killed, identified, assassinated, jailed, all of the above. Probably the most famous case was a guy by the name of Martin Barreau, Dr. Ignacio Martin Barreau, social psychologist, trained at the University of Chicago, went back to the University of Central America, where he was also assassinated, right? Because they started educating the people, teaching the people, the peasants to teach the people, right? And they were teaching them a lot about capitalism with their own literature, right? And they also were talking a lot and teaching them a lot about the trade deals between their respective countries and the U.S. Lots of PAR members have been killed, particularly outside of this country. So yes, we actually talk about all of this. We talk about it on the way up. The implications are enormous, right? Not right now, we think we have some time to grow and all of that. PAR is done a lot throughout the country, mostly in public health and education. There is a criminology wing as well. I would say public health is probably the most empirical with it, but most PAR is participatory. The action is for the most part left out, right? So community-based participatory research is the most commonly funded, particularly from the federal government, NIH, right? But they don't fund the action part. They have funded about 13 PAR projects though, through like ROI grants or something like that. And they are light on the action and heavy on participatory and light on training the folk. Now, we say all that to say this. Yes, at some point, and I'm very honest when I sit with civic and political leadership. Right? The governor, the mayor, right? We're around these people pretty regularly. The project is a big deal in Delaware, right? And within the, some circles in the academy. And we're scientists, and science activists, right? So we don't necessarily have a political agenda, at least in the traditional sense. And I'm very honest with them behind closed doors about what's going on. Structural inequality, people sustaining economic poverty, they actually don't disagree. They won't go public with it. But they understand what's going on as well. Right? I haven't found one major politician to disagree with me behind closed doors. Secretaries of State, the senator, etc., or senators, etc., etc., etc. Right? So, and we're upfront, and we're honest, right? So leading economists argue, and I say to them, right, leading economists argue that at least 5% of the adult population needs to be unemployed at any one time. And that population is disproportionately black and brown, by the way. Anybody know what that actually works out to in terms of actual numbers on the ground? About 5% of the U.S. population? That works out to be somewhere between 50 to 20 million people are required to live in extreme poverty. Most people in middle America, like you and me, will make it, do whatever it is that you aspire to. Most folk in low-income black and brown communities, like Central Harlem or Black Harlem, will not. It wouldn't matter how hard they work. That's why we're in the business of getting on the ground to really inform them of structural violence and how all of this works. I speak in prisons a lot, right? And I often open my talk by arguing, I love my big house, I love my nice life, but for me to have it, no doubt I have to work hard, but I need somebody in a place like this. And maybe most of you have done something to be in here, but nonetheless, the way that it works now is this. I need you here so that we can live and experience our privilege. Right? 1 out of 5 people live in economic poverty, and that's a conservative estimate. All of it is required. It is doing. They are the schools, right? The dropout, that is part of, usual business. It's necessary. So we are clear. And we're clear, if we really develop a momentum, when we really develop a momentum, we're clear on where it will go. Right? But there must be sacrifice. Now, we're not planning to go anywhere, but we understand the implications of it all. Keep in mind, right, I gave a big talk on MLK Day. MLK, the first phase of him, represented traditional black leadership. He didn't listen. His base was progressive white America and, some version of the upper middle class and definitely regions in the South. Right? He didn't really listen to poor black and brown people in general. Not early on. Ossie Davis, right, I had a chance to see him before he died, and he was speaking on MLK Day. This was years ago, of course, and he says MLK finally woke up the last few years of his life. That's one of his closest friends. He actually started listening to poor black people. Right? And then he started, as a consequence, to fight against capitalism, unemployment, the military, and because he was very influential, he lost his life. That's what he was assassinated. He wasn't assassinated for race relations and fighting for racism. He was assassinated because he started fighting against capitalism, and he was messing around with that money system. Right? But he realized that his people, they had been screaming in his ears for years on end. They had been screaming, where are the jobs? Why aren't we talking about that? Quality employment brings down every social ill that you can imagine, including HIV and AIDS, the STIs.